Welcome back to the Voices of MED13L. Today we're going to focus on connection, especially for families who are new to MED13L or haven't yet gotten involved with the foundation. We'll talk about how to engage with the community, participate in research, and take small steps that can make a big difference in your child's life. I'll also be walking through our new patient checklist with a special guest, discussing why each step matters and how it can help families feel more supported and confident as they begin their journey. You can see the checklist on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, and for podcast listeners, the link is in our show notes. Our goal is to help you feel connected, informed, and a part of a growing global community, because every family's voice moves our mission forward. Let's get started.
Oh, together we are not so rich.
If you're new to the Med13L community, welcome. I'm here today with my co-host, Yinan Champagnier, who is also a fellow Med13L parent and a board member for the Med13L Foundation. We both know firsthand how overwhelming those first few weeks after a diagnosis can feel. There's a lot of information coming at you all at once from your physicians, from the foundation, from your friends, from your families. But today, we want to break it down into essential steps so every family can take part in your child's journey to find support, to understand the diagnosis, and to get connected.
Thank you, Vanessa. And I think that the steps are really a great place to start. They help families feel more confident and less alone when they navigate care and community and research and just try to wrap their heads around what it means to suddenly become a MED13L family, especially for new diagnosis families that, only yesterday heard the term for the first time.
That's right. I think one of the things that I found so overwhelming was where to start when it comes to ruling out comorbidities. And for those of you that don't know that term yet, comorbidities simply means medical or other developmental conditions that can occur alongside a disease. And in particular here, we are talking about MED13L. So Inan, can you tell me about some of the clinicians that you went and took your child to after you got the diagnosis?
Yes, so I think I should probably start by saying that I believe that we were one of the first families diagnosed back. Ilan was born in 2012. We were diagnosed in 2014. At the time, the MED13L Foundation didn't exist yet, so only Simons were starting to collect data from people, and there was very little known at the time about MED13L compared to what we know today. So at the time, they believed that one of the main symptoms of MED13L was heart issues. So we first went to a cardiologist. We're very happy to hear that Ilan didn't have the heart issues that were associated with MED13L. And then, of course, went to a neurologist and worked very closely with a geneticist to try to understand the meaning of MED13L. Also went to a gastroenterologist to see about digestive issues. Ilan also had thyroid problems, so went to an endocrinologist. And the list goes on and on. We find that every child is different and has different problems, but it's very common to have a lot of comorbidities. And some of them are associated with MED13L and some not necessarily. If you look at the pictures of many of the cute kids on our MED13L gallery, so many of them wear glasses. I believe Elle does too, right?
Yes, she does.
Yeah, and so does Ilan. So vision problems are common. So we also saw an eye doctor. Hearing issues are also more common than appeared in literature until recently. So also went to an ENT, and the list goes on and on.
That's interesting that you say that, because I think one of the first challenges I found with my daughter was originally with the newborn screening. She had the hearing test and they said she passed, but I was pretty sure she was having some challenges hearing. When we were calling her, I took her to an ENT who referred me to an audiologist who said her ear canals, the eustachian tubes, are so tiny, I can't actually get a good read. And that's one of the things that later we come to find out, the more and more we connect with the community, that some narrow sinuses and craniofacial dysmorphism is common with our kids, right? Which can cause all sorts of challenges with frequent ear infections and frequent sinus infections. And so establishing a really good network of specialists early on is really important. One of the first therapists that we connected with was a speech therapist, in addition to an occupational therapist and physical therapy. We actually connected with all of those before we even got our diagnosis, because after my daughter was born and as she developed, it became more and more apparent that she was needing support to reach her milestones. So I did not reach out and find a developmental pediatrician right away. My general pediatrician was the one who was just referring us to these different therapists. I was convinced that there's just so much more than just a delay in development, that we then went to a geneticist. Then we realized that this is going to be a lifelong journey for us. And like you had mentioned, one of the biggest things that we saw on the internet after we Googled MED13L syndrome, after we got the diagnosis, was there's all these cardiac issues related to it, because that's really all that was known. The more I've gotten involved with the community over the course of several years, we've embraced participation with surveys and have rallied the community to get them to participate. And the more and more we connect with other people, we're learning that actually a lot of our kids don't have cardiac issues, although there is a portion of our population that does. Being engaged with the community and connecting with other families and connecting with the foundation and filling out the surveys really helps paint a more true picture of what Med13L looks like.
Absolutely. And first of all, this was very much our experience as well. Also, in terms of hearing loss in the ear canals, and especially when Ilan was younger, over time, his ear canals grew. And then the hearing loss that he was diagnosed with earlier on seemed to no longer be an issue. But yes, therapies as well. Even before we had a diagnosis, which Ilan got around age 2, we already took him to see two different therapists: physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and then also, like most parents, especially after you get a diagnosis, behavioral therapy, ABA,
Yes.
also very important. I look back at the time when so little was known about MED13L and about the comorbidities and about what the journey is going to look like. And I'm happier for parents who are getting the diagnosis today that so much more is known, and that there's such a system of support of the foundation, the MED13L Foundation, and the community that it's creating both globally and here in the US. And you can learn so much more from the experience of parents. It's so much easier to connect to parents. And of course the surveys, and we'll touch on that as we talk, but give such a better picture of what it's like to have a MED13L child. There's so many issues, and you mentioned heart. Yeah, the beginning, they actually, before they even realized that MED13L affects brain development, I guess because of anecdotal research, there are just a couple of cases that of cardiac issues. I believe it's TGA, transplantation of the great arteries, or something like that. And they believe that was the main feature of MED13L. And of course, now that we have so much more data, we realize that that's almost a non-issue. But at the time, we knew less. So by filling out surveys and by participating in data collection, families enable the MED13L Foundation to just get a much better picture, and actually enable the entire community to have a much better sense of what it's like to have a MED13L child.
You joined the community before the foundation was started. I joined the community, I think, just a few years after it was started, but the Sexton family was really focusing on rallying for awareness. And then when I joined in 2020 with Nick Seaver, a fellow board member, we really just kind of said, let's try to dive into research. And the more we went down that path, the more we realized we really need the community to get involved, because we need to know what to treat. And the surveys can be very overwhelming. It's overwhelming for me. I mean, I don't know how many violins I filled out. I actually have one that I'm supposed to be doing right now too. But there's a 2025 census going on right now that I'll link it in the show notes. But we're trying to gather information on families and where they're at in the world. And I think one of the coolest things, as I was piecing the information together on a map, our population is just growing and growing. It's
Yes,
incredible. And I think what's cool
rapidly.
about that is we're finding people we can connect with that live in similar locations, that perhaps are struggling with similar challenges with their school districts, or finding therapists or treatment. How many people are near you in California?
I think we have about 20 families California, obviously being very large, many families are spread around, Northern California and Central California, Southern California and Los Angeles. But we have over 20 families. And we just recently discovered we have 3 families in Pasadena, which is, possibly, Pasadena being a relatively small suburb of Los Angeles, ends up being having one of the highest concentrations of MED13L families just by chance. But there are pockets of population, people who live, like 5 minutes away from each other, not even aware that the other family exists. But thanks to social media and thanks to the
Yeah.
foundation and how easy it is to connect today, we
Yeah.
connect people. Every other day we get a diagnosis from another country in the world. And then, we have our regional ambassadors all over the world, and we connect people with someone in their location.
Yeah.
Suddenly they find out about resources that they didn't know are
Yeah.
available, or
Yeah.
for, especially for a family receiving a new diagnosis,
Right.
not knowing the first thing about it. It's so valuable to find someone near you who
Right.
knows what it's like, sometimes speaks your language for people who don't even speak English. It's so important. Um,
Absolutely. So I would encourage all the listeners to go onto the website. And again, I'll link it in the show notes to please go on and register your family with the foundation so we can see where you're at. And we will be publishing an anonymous map. It's so comforting to connect with people that are truly living a very similar life to you because they're also within the same community as you. I think by me, there's 5 families within 30 minutes driving distance, which is, I think, fantastic. And it just goes to show you that we're not so rare after all.
Since you mentioned you're joining the foundation, and I think that it just speaks to how important it is to have a community and find out what other people are doing. So I think that when we received the diagnosis in 2014, we were the third family to join the Simons Foundation. So, there
Wow.
are very few families that we could connect with. I think that I called the other two families, and that was pretty much it. Later, I became the mediator of the Simons Foundation Facebook page. So whenever a new family joined, I spoke with them, and then we got to know each other. But for the first 2 years, I was obsessed with research, just, what can be done in order to try to find some intervention. And, I reach out to every scientist around the world who seemed
Yeah.
to have any kind of expertise
Yeah.
that could in some way be helpful. And pretty much the consensus was that there's nothing that can be done beyond managing. I mean, there are no pharmaceutical interventions, no therapeutics. It was just managing the symptoms and the syndrome. And so after about 2 years, I kind of gave up trying to find an
Mhm.
intervention, a solution, like
Yeah.
a breakthrough, and just focused on, everyday life as we all do as parents. And then the moment that you and Nick joined the foundation, when you received your diagnosis and you created the Cure MED13L initiative, I remember your first posts, and I remember the optimism that suddenly I had. Like, wow, there are other parents who are driving research, who have knowledge that I don't have, and have an optimism that, I'm naturally an optimistic person, but I kind of lost that for
Yeah.
a number of years. And suddenly I'm like, oh, wow, there are people who are actually trying to drive research forward. I'd love to be a part of that. I'd love to hear what they're doing. Let's see what can be done. And I think that speaks a lot to the value of community and the
Absolutely.
value of connecting with other people, seeing what they know, seeing what resources they have, who they know, who they already spoke with, what information. Remember at the time when I first spoke with you and Nick, there are all these other experts that I've reached out to over the years, and then we just exchanged a few emails, but I did not continue to engage them. And suddenly, we could engage them again and say, hey, did you speak to this other researcher on
Right.
the other side of the world who's doing research that could be valuable to you or could be valuable to MED13L families? There's so much power to collaboration and to community. And as someone who initially found it, also like so important to get research, sometimes it's lost on people how important it is to have community collecting data in order to have research breakthroughs. Because the research is based on existing data. And if you don't have that data from a very large, pool of the community, then you're not able to have breakthroughs.
I know the foundation is collecting data through the Rare X initiative. And we're also doing something with the Boston Children's Hospital. Can you explain to the listeners why it's important for that data to be collected? Like, what is it trying to do?
So yeah, I think that's so important, and especially because I know that so many parents are deterred by filling out surveys because it could be exhausting and it's very time consuming, and all of us have so much on our plates. But first of all, without the data, we can't push research forward. If we don't know exactly what it means for so many different families, what are the symptoms that they're seeing? What are the problems that they're dealing with? What are the connections between different variants? Even though all of our children have MED13L syndrome, they have different variants at different locations on the MED13L DNA strand. And if we don't understand how that correlates to the symptoms that they have, then we can't know what could or could not be effective for therapeutics. And also, without collecting that data, we're not aware of what are the problems that need to be treated. And we mentioned hearing before. At the time when the first research came out about MED13L, no one even mentioned hearing
Right.
loss as an issue. Just no one knew about it. No one talked about it. Even when the Science Foundation were collecting data, there weren't enough people participating to find out about a lot of problems,
Mhm.
such as hearing, that only later, when we started collecting more and more data, became more obvious that they're more prevalent. So to answer the question, I think that it's pivotal to collect research, to collect data in order to be able to move research forward. I think that every family that has MED13L wants their child to be counted and wants the foundation and the community and the research community to be aware of what MED13L is like for them and for their child. And in order for the child to be included essentially in research, in order for the data to be available to the scientists who are doing the research, the data needs to be shared, and the way to share the data is through data collection platforms such as RareX.
What the foundation and what you mean by data, it's literally telling your child's symptoms, the child's struggles, your struggles with your child, the challenges that your child needs extra help with. That's the data that the the foundation's collecting, because that's what researchers need to have. And again, to your point, we're trying to create a picture of what MED13L looks like. So when we get to the point, because we are simultaneously trying to find therapeutics, drugs to repurpose to help our kids, we need to know what MED13L looks like. And then when we try these therapeutics, how it changes it for the better, and if it changes it. So we need to see what it looks like first, and we can't just say, oh, this is what my kid looks like, and I'm going to give them this medication, and look, they're better. In order for things to be approved by the FDA, we need concrete evidence. And so, unfortunately, to your point, when I joined the foundation too, or got my diagnosis, I did the same thing you did. I Googled MED13L. I looked up every researcher that had ever published anything on MED13L, and I reached out to them. I emailed them. I said, hey, my daughter has this specific variant. I sent them her genetic report. I'm like, can you help? And to your point, everyone's like, no, I just wrote a paper because that's what I was doing in school, or I had funding for that, just that one specific project, and they weren't really paying attention. Well, the way that we get people to pay attention is we build a large set of information for researchers to say, hey, I have this drug, and look at how much it can impact these people. And it's a large group of people, even though we're rare, it's a large group of people. Let's do something with this. And then more people will pay attention to MED13L. So we're essentially trying to create the buzz that Alzheimer's has, create the buzz that cancer has. We're trying to create the buzz for MED13L. And we're doing that by building our data, building our population.
Absolutely. And specifically with RareX, I know because we've reached out to so many families and also so many families have filled out the surveys, but many parents just find it daunting. They see all
Yeah.
the surveys and they're just, I don't even know where to start. So, I'm just not going to do it. I'll just keep postponing it and then it never gets done. So for people who don't know where to start, first of all, just logging in and signing up, which is free, of course. Just signing in and just starting the process is so important. And then I believe that the first survey is called the head to toe assessment. And if you can just fill that out, just have like the basics of like, okay, let's go head to toe. What are the problems? Are there vision problems? Are there hearing problems? Are there cardiac problems? Are there neurological problems, speech problems, etc.? Just let's have like a basic picture of what it's like for your child with MED13L. And then, you get into the behavior checklist and the ortho communication survey, the Vineland, which we mentioned, which is also the adaptive behavior skills. And then for people who have seizures, which we also know is associated with the syndrome, there's a seizure survey. And even just filling out several of those really helps create a better picture, a more accurate picture of what it's like to raise a MED13L child.
The other must to really make an impact with your RareX participation is upload your genetic report. That is something that we're really trying to track the different types of variants, and we'll go into that later on a different episode, what the different types of variants mean. Perhaps I think each one maybe needs its own episode. Even though we're all MED13L families, the variants can cause a little different phenotype or how your child presents. And so it is important for us to track and see, are there kind of hot spots on the MED13L gene where some mutations are happening, or is it really scattered? In those hot spots, do those children share the same type of characteristics? It's really important to get the best clear picture of what MED13L is. There's another platform that we use that I'd like you to talk about that's even easier to sign up for.
Yes, and that is Citizen, and it's a great opportunity to clear some of the confusion because very often people say, "Oh no, yeah, I already signed up for Citizen, so maybe I don't need to do RX," vice versa, and they have different functions. Even though we encourage our families to upload genetic reports to both of them, but Citizen Health, they collect health records, medical records. And that's very, very useful, especially for people living in the US, also around the world, but especially in the US, where all the data that people upload, all the health records that people upload are gathered in one place. And then if a family goes to a new doctor for their child and they want to share all the information, they can just do it with one click. And it's so useful. I mean, we've mentioned before all the different doctors that you see, all the different specialists that you go to with your child, and all the amount of, health data that is collected, and then being able to aggregate all of that in one place. And then when you go see a new doctor, just being able to share it that way is very valuable. So Citizen Health, which is also very easy to sign up
Which
on,
we'll link in
and
the show notes as well.
yes, is very important for collecting health data. And it's important for the MED13L Foundation, but I think that it's also extremely useful for families, especially in the US. You upload the health records that you have. As a matter of fact, you upload whatever you have, but you can simply put in the information of doctors that your child has seen, and Citizen Health will reach out to the doctors or to the clinics or the hospitals, and with your consent, gather the information so that it can be available to you and you have control over that data, be available to you to share with other doctors. So that is Citizen Health, and that's very, very important. And it's important to distinguish between Citizen Health and RareX. RareX is a data collection platform that collects data from caregivers. So they collect surveys that parents fill out. What type of speech problems does your child have? What type of behavioral problems does your child have? Where Citizen collect health records that exist on the computers of hospitals and clinics where your child was seen. So separate things.
Yes, separate and both very important because the medical records are just a snapshot of the biometrics of what's going on with your child. But the patient and the parent surveys are so important because that's our opportunity to share our story of the challenges that we live with day to day. With those two combined, you really create a complete picture of what is going on for the child and for the family. So, very important. We do have some resources on our website at med13l.org where new families can visit. I think most useful things besides going to the new diagnosis help under resources, the resource tab, at the very bottom there is a glossary. There's a lot of terms that new families are getting bombarded with that can feel extremely overwhelming, and when you're already going through absorbing and processing this major pivot, hearing a bunch of terms that sound like a foreign language to you is just that much more challenging. So I would encourage families to go to our website. There's a lot of information on there. There's research opportunities. Again, if you're just joining the foundation with a new diagnosis, the most important thing you can do is go to the new diagnosis help. There's the checklist and reach out to the foundation. A few of the other resources I'd like to recommend people go through as they're receiving their new diagnosis is join us on Facebook. We have a really robust active community on Facebook for the MED13L Foundation. We also have an Instagram page. There is a Slack group where people can communicate internationally or even locally. You can communicate that way.
I think that the newsletter, we always recommend that people sign up for the newsletter and also look at previous newsletters. Obviously, we're talking about e-newsletters that you get by email, but there's just so much information that's already available. I remember when I didn't join the foundation. The foundation didn't exist, but when I got diagnosed in 2014, there was so little information available.
Yeah.
And the only information that was available was some studies that were mostly anecdotal about the disease mechanisms that were obviously very important for MED13L research at that time, but they're also very lacking. There was no information about what it's like to raise a MED13L child, the behavioral problems, and there's 1,000 times more information available today. And so much of it is already collected and curated in the newsletters.
I'll link in the show notes. We have a page where you can go visit the old newsletters as well as sign up for future newsletters. Oh, and then To your point of joining and getting caught up, our YouTube page, we have a YouTube page
Yes.
where we just hosted a family meetup where we had researchers come present on the latest and greatest research of what's going on, and families. We had a lot of families there. It was a fantastic community event. I think it helped sparked a lot of hope for families to see that, the foundation is actively pursuing treatments for our kids. And there really is hope where we can improve their day to day. So visit YouTube if you want to watch the presentations that were given by the researchers and some of the other specialists that came to present.
Absolutely. And go on the website and just navigate the website. The new diagnosis help page is so important, but then also there's so many resources that already exist on the website. Even I sometimes talk to people and they want information, and I find it rather than just starting to explain things from the beginning, I just send them a link to one of the resources on the website and just to give them a better, more comprehensive understanding of what MED13L is like.
Yeah, it's important for the community to know that the website is perpetually updated. We are constantly updating it. So it's not some static page that just sits there and, is information from 2020. We're constantly updating it. If there's something new to share, we'll put it on the website. So it's something that is actually really good for you to share with your family members, your doctors. Another thing that we want to share with our doctors, especially if you're getting a new diagnosis, is the ICD-10 code. We have one and it's Q87.85. Let me say that again. It's Q87.85. And it's really important to update your healthcare practitioners with that code because it really does help within the insurance system and where our people are at. And then on top of it, it really helps guide clinicians who don't really know how to manage a child with MED13L. Physicians can go plug in MED13L or Q87.85, and it'll actually guide them to order a cardiology visit, order a neurology visit, speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. So it really builds a guideline for clinicians to help support your child's development. We worked really hard for that, so don't
Yes,
forget
yes,
to
you
do
did.
that.
A major achievement of the foundation that you and Nick also put so much time and effort into making that happen. And it's very valuable. Also valuable even from the point of view of insurance. Once you have a code, you're able to actually get a lot of things approved that otherwise would not be. Also, probably worth mentioning the CRID, the Clinical Research ID,
Yes.
if we haven't already. So once you start participating in research, especially since most of it is done anonymously, then the way that the patient is processed through the system is using a number that allows them to also remain anonymous, and that is the CRID. So that is also something that's good for people to obtain, and there's information on our website as well on how to go ahead and obtain a
Yeah,
CRID.
so we will put everything together in the show notes for families as a quick reference, a quick link out to your to-dos to get fully engaged with the MED13L Foundation. Participating this way and engaging with the foundation fully is your way to stay connected. RareX is in multiple languages and they are working to roll out more languages. And then we have opportunities for people to contribute to research through the biorepository. We need specimens in order to really investigate like what MED13L is doing at the cellular level, what compounds that the researchers are considering do to alter the expression of MED13L. So there's lots of ways to get involved.
A quick recap of the steps that we mentioned, and again acknowledging how challenging it is for parents to get a new diagnosis. I mean, it takes time to. We've all been there, and it takes time to kind of wrap your head around it and what it means. Fortunately, since so many of us have already walked that path, it's more clear now than it used to be. So when we talk about the steps that people can take once they receive the diagnosis, first of all, we say you're going to see specialists. So you can go on the MED13L website, get the ICD-10 code Q87.85, as you mentioned. Then we encourage people to join our census, register in order to be counted, in order for us to know where you are in the world, which also helps connect families in different parts of the world. And then we encourage people to sign up for the newsletter, to stay connected, to learn about new research opportunities, which we roll out all the time. Learn the basics, go on the FAQ page, learn what are all the different terms that you hear about MED13L, what are other problems that are common for, and symptoms that are common for MED13L families. Joining the registries, so turning the stories into science, collecting data. So as we mentioned, we asked people to get a CRID, the Clinical Research ID, and then enroll with RareX for caregiver surveys and upload records on RareX as well as Citizen Health. And we have links for everything on the page. And six, which is no less important than the rest of it, is just connecting with the community. Facebook page, Slack page, Instagram page. And there's so many resources that are available now. Someone can ask a question right now on our Facebook page, and 100 parents will share the information that they have. What did they do with a certain symptom? How did their child respond to a certain medication, etc. And that's information that's available online. And very often, we even tell new families, doctors only know so much. It's really the parents who have been living with MED13L children that have all this information available. And so many of them are so willing to share it online. All I need to do is ask and join the Facebook page.
And that brings up actually a really good point. We're obviously talking about a lot of new families that are just getting their diagnoses, but families that have been living with MED13L for a very long time, the information that you can share by participating in these surveys is priceless. We don't know what MED13L looks like for the 25-year-old and so forth. There's a lot of stages of development that happens for a kid, and it's challenging to share your experience as a seasoned MED13L parent with us newbies. There's just a wealth of information that we can't give because we're not there yet for the natural history study. So for those of you who are listening to this and have the older child, please take the time to get up to speed as well and get fully engaged. So I thank you, Inan, for helping me get this
Thank you.
information out to the
Thank
community
you.
today.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your time today. And for anyone who's listening and you have questions, please email all questions to info@med13l.org. And then please join our Facebook group. Thank you again.
Anything for